I think it's safe to say I'm a bit of a fan of Fluance audio. I've reviewed a fair amount of their gear, from turntables to sound bases to powered bookshelf speakers, so I was really excited when I got a chance to review a home theater package. This time it was the XL8 home theater package. My name's Taps, this is 0102 Studio, and I'm going to backtrack and talk about a home theater package I got in not too long ago from Fluance Audio. I originally did this review maybe a year or two ago, and I shot video for it, and the video was horrible. I was just learning how to do video, so I have some somewhat usable B-roll of those speakers, but the review itself was just, it was crap. So I'm redoing the video talking head portion here. I'm not much better at these videos, but at least, it looks a little bit better, and I don't have to do as many cuts to my A-roll as I had to do for that video. I'm just going to caution you, I'm going to belabor about price a lot in this video because I'm actually surprised that so much is on offer for so little. Fluance's XL8 speaker package is part of their reference line, which is sandwiched between their very entry-level Elite series and their Signature series of speakers. There's really not a lot of space between their prices. Like, their reference package is cheap, and their Elite series is even cheaper, and their Signature series is not much more than the reference series. It's all pretty budget when you look at it compared to other speaker manufacturers. The reference series consists of 4 speaker options: the floor standers, the bookshelves, bipolar surrounds, and a center channel. The reference series comes in either a black ash or walnut wood veneer finish. All of the speakers in the reference line have white drivers with a glossy black front and magnetic grills. What really attracted me to this lineup of speakers is that for the price, the cabinets themselves look almost seamless. Fluance uses a lot of the same technology to keep costs down throughout their lines of speakers, and the reference series is no different. They actually use the same tweeter that's used in their higher end Signature series. The reference floor standers are a fairly intimidating proposition. They stand just about a hair under 4 feet tall, they weigh 47 pounds. Surprisingly easy to move around for a 47-pound speaker. Like, I didn't really have any trouble moving them around. They felt like they weighed quite a bit less. They're a 3-way reflex design with a really inert cabinet. The floor standers feature 2 6.5-inch glass fiber drivers with a 1-inch silk dome sitting between them. The black butyl surrounds on the mid-range drivers help with the narrow appearance of the speakers as they reduce the size appearance of the drivers themselves. The XL8Fs feature an 8-inch isolated polymer-treated high-excursion down-firing drivers built into the foot of each tower. The bottom of the speaker is elevated a little bit on small little plinths, just so it gives the driver on the bottom some breathing rooms to push some air. If you peek around the back, you'll find 2 bass reflex ports that help the bass response and reduce cabinet resonance. Also around the back are gold-plated 5-way binding posts for biamping or bi-wiring needs. A fabric grille is magnetic. Yay! I reviewed a pair of the Signature series bookshelf speakers, and I really loved them. I thought they were really great sounding and provided amazing value for money. And I remarked in my review for that I thought they would make amazing surround speakers as well, because they didn't punch as low as a larger bookshelf speaker, but what they did is provide amazing mid-range and great clarity. So I was happy to see that the reference series had a similar speaker, and given that they share the same tweeters, the performance should be fairly similar to their Signature series. These are 3-way speakers that would be happy on stands, in a bookshelf, or affixed to a wall. They're fairly light and they're fairly diminutive in size. These feature a 5.25-inch version of the same driver that's in the floor standers. The front of the speaker features 2 bass reflex ports that flank either side of the tweeter. Around the back, you'll find a single set of gold-plated binding posts and integrated wall-mounting brackets. And lastly is the center channel speaker. It features 2 of the 5.25-inch drivers that's found on the surround speaker, and yeah, they sit on either side of the tweeter in the middle. They're really easy to set up. The floor standers, while being 47 pounds, didn't really feel like 47-pound speakers, so they're really easy to move into place. I omitted using the copper floor spikes that were supplied with the speakers because I like my floors, and I also have young kids, and I didn't want the speakers to move in any way or fall over. The surrounds were placed on stands on either side of my couch at the time. The center channel is set below my receiver in like the slot in the media stand. It's a bit lower than ear level. Not the most ideal scenario, but it was the best place for it. I paired the speaker package with the Q Acoustics QB12 subwoofer, paired with a Marantz SR6009 receiver. I also brought the Cambridge Audio CXA61 downstairs into the basement so I could test out the XL8s and the XLS, the bookshelf and the floor standers, in 2-channel listening to see how they fared. At the time of the review, my weekly viewing was Formula One Drive to Survive on Netflix, 000 on Amazon Prime, Falcon and the Winter Soldier on Disney Plus, and what was the other one? My notes, Invincible. I incorrectly just assumed from getting the package in that the upper bass and mid-range would be slightly muddy and not overly clear, and I couldn't be more wrong. The bass slammed, it had lots of impact. Dialogue and effect steering was what really stood out. The dialogue was clear, the sound was lush, it was crisp. It didn't ever edge on like harsh or tinny. It was just a really good listen. The tweeters were what really had a hand in this. Everything was really crisp and bright, but not too bright. Everything was a little rolled off on the top, which made louder levels more palatable to your ears. Also, it made for listening to like poor recording, which I do fairly often, easier to listen to through this package. While yes, we do all listen to high-res audio here, I listen to a lot of non-high-res audio because I have a lot of music that's converted from cassette to MP3 that I did a long time ago, and it's not awesome. When you play it through really revealing gear, it kind of sucks to listen to, but if you put it through something that's not overly clinical and not too precise, it's just enjoyable. But let's not forget about those racing sounds. Oh my god, like the crashes, the engine roaring, the crowds. Like, I did a lot of listening with the subwoofer turned off because I wanted to see what the effect of having that 8-inch bass driver on the bottom of the floor standers really did. So I ran the floor standers full range, subwoofer turned off, and to be honest, you don't really need a subwoofer. Like, if you're short on space but you really want to have a theater package in, this'll do it. Fluance claims the frequency response going down to about 35 hertz, and while I didn't do any scientific or semi-scientific measuring of frequency response, they sound like they go pretty low. With Falcon and the Winter Soldier, like, I mean, yeah, it's old now, but with that show, the dialogue really stood out. Like, it was really dialogue heavy. Like, the action was a bit more sparse, and I've talked about the bass weight quite a bit, but the dialogue really stands on its own here. It's really easy to hear, even at low volumes. My previous home theater package was the B&W 683 home theater package. So it was like two really large floor standers, a center speaker that was really big and not easy to place. I didn't find the dialogue to be very clear with that setup. On the Marantz, I actually had to bump up the dialogue channel by like 2 decibels, sometimes 3 or even more, depending on how I had them placed, because it just wasn't clear enough. And with the Fluance system in place, like I just ran auto setup and everything worked. Moving over to music, I brought this Cambridge Audio CXA61 down for my 2-channel test. First with the floor standers and then with the bookshelves, paired with the Q Acoustics QB12, just to, even out the bass response between the speakers, because there is a fair bit of difference. One of the reasons I picked the CXA61 is that I found in my testing of that amp that the overall tone was really bright and a bit more clinical. There wasn't tone controls on the amplifier, and so it did lean a little leaner than I found other amplifiers did. And then I connected it, and holy hell. The Cambridge drove the floor standers far better than the Marantz ever could. Bass was actually fatter, the mid-range was more clear, and the highs had way more detail in it, and I didn't notice the roll-off in the treble as much as I did with the Marantz. It was so good that I left the floor standers connected directly to the Cambridge and just used pre-outs from the Marantz into the Cambridge for my listening from then on in. One of the tracks that I tested out was a track by ASC called Fatal Error. It's a drum and bass track, but it's one of those that ASC does a lot of like ambient music. It's a track that just builds and builds and builds and builds. It really shows off the strength of the floor standers connected to the Cambridge. As the music got more detailed and had more substance and more weight, the floor standers didn't flinch. No matter how loud I had it, it just kept getting more full and more detailed. Given that the 8-inch drivers on the floor standers point to the floor, there's no bass management in the speakers, so you're sort of limited to how you can augment the amount of bass coming out of the speakers, barring on the Marantz, you can sort of set a cutoff. But if you run them full range or connected to the Cambridge, there's no bass management in that either, and no tone controls. So you're going to be treated with tons of bass coming out of that speaker if you do run it that way. If you're looking for every last drop of detail coming from speakers, this isn't for you. But if you're like me and you like a bump in the bass and you prefer slam over outright neutrality, these are the speakers for you. Next, I subbed in the bookshelf speakers in place of the floor standers and just ran the same track back once more. I'd kept them towed in a little bit more, and for the first bit, I just ran them without a subwoofer, knowing that they're not going to provide the same amount of bass, but just to get a sense of what the overall tone of the speakers was, and it was essentially the same with less weight on the sound. I did find that I had to turn up the volume a little more to get a bit more grunt out of them. I do find that the mid-range of the floor standers is a bit better, but it's sort of overshadowed by the bass output of the speaker because you can't really control it too much. Depending on your space, you could either just have the bookshelves as your front, left and right, and your surround speakers and be extremely happy with that, providing that you have a subwoofer connected. But if you have a larger space, the floor standers would be or better fit for you. With the subwoofer connected, you could be quite a bit more liberal with the volume because when like certain bass notes hit in, you don't really have to worry about like the bass totally disappearing in the presentation. But if you're listening to more acoustic music, it's less of an issue. I just don't listen to a lot of acoustic music. I did a lot of back and forth between the speakers just with different tracks, and my overall conclusions are pretty much the same. I'm really impressed with both the floor stander and the bookshelf speaker. And it's really just what is your use case and what is your room like? More room, floor standers, smaller room, bookshelves. The gap between the high end and the low end is shrinking rapidly. And this reference series from Fluance is proof of that. If you're looking for outright neutrality and you have the best components already, then you'd probably skip past this speaker package. But if you're just getting started, or if you just don't want to break the bank, the Fluance reference series is amazing value. It's a perfect speaker package to get. And then it's just a matter of aesthetics. If you like the way the package looks aesthetically, then pull the trigger and go get them. As a fan of budget audio, I make much ado about value for money, and Fluance has knocked it out of the park on this one. If you do buy this package, it might just be the last speaker package you buy.